The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on earth nations will be in dismay, perplexed by the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will die of fright in anticipation of what is coming upon the world, for the powers of the heaven will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. But when these signs begin to happen, stand erect and raise your heads, because your redemption is at hand. Beware that your hearts do not become drowsy from carousing and drunkenness and the anxieties of daily life, that the day may catch you by surprise like a trap. For that day will assault everyone who lives on the face of the earth. Be vigilant at all times, and pray that you will have the strength to escape the tribulations that are imminent and to stand before the Son of Man." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Advent. A new year. Though I say that with some trepidation. After all, 2021 was to be the year that we get back to normal. Yet the pandemic has continued to rage on. And the divisions within our nation and our church have only grown wider. Violence, blatant racism, and sexism were justified and even celebrated. And all the while, the internal temperature of the earth continued to rise. As 2021 went on, I began to realize that in the phrase "return to normal," the only word I truly understood was the preposition. A preposition that was working overtime to try to make some connection between the words return and normal. We begin this new year, this time of Advent, with ongoing uncertainty. We are tired. We're stressed. We're frustrated. And we share our life with others who are as certain and as hurting as we are. Advent begins with that primordial cry for justice and redemption. But Advent also begins with God's promise, a promise delivered through the prophet Jeremiah. The days are coming when I will fulfill the promise I made. The days are coming when I will fulfill the promise I made. Advent reminds us that we wait for something beyond what we can do. A lawyer who also happens to be a friend spoke with me about the limits of our legal system. And I'll try to paraphrase his words. He said, courts can apply the law and give some remuneration, but they really cannot give justice. Many people leave the court angry because they're asking for too much. They ask for justice. We can give money. We can take a criminal off the street, but we cannot set things right. Advent is about justice and peace. It is about God setting things right in a way that we ourselves cannot. When Jeremiah proclaims God's promise of raising up for David a just shoot, he is addressing our deepest human longing. But note that Jeremiah does not say anything about people making their own lives better. Peace is not dependent on the meager peace that we can and should share with one another, but it's dependent on God coming with peace that will last forever. An Army chaplain who also happens to be the professor at Princeton for homiletics, James Key, said, quote, "If the gospel is good news, it is not because it predicts a bright, cheery future based on our morality or our piety. The gospel is good news because it promises a future based on God's faithfulness." End quote. The good news of Advent is that God will not give up on the world. A revolutionary God intends to make all things new, transforming us. In Advent, we are not watching for a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and laid in a manger. We are watching for the risen Christ. We look and we work for a new heaven and a new earth, a time when fear, inequality, and injustice will be no more. And so we live here and now as if the world is actually a little better than it is, for we see and love Christ in friends and enemies, in our neighbors and in strangers, in our homeless and our hungry. We need not wait, because God is already waiting to fill empty spirits with joy, waiting to give us the courage to risk and to invite us to love. And may we open our hearts to the boundless future that is coming and is already here. May we partake in the one bread and the one cup as a participation in the justice and peace that is yet to come. May we share some of our bread with those who are in need as our down payment and our pledge on God's promise.